Hi there, this is Caitlin from my channel Bandy's Books, and I'm here today to do my weekly update. So if you're new to these updates, this is typically just a quick update, usually like 15 to 30 minutes, where I chat about what's going on in my life, what's going on with my channel, what I've been reading, and then what I'm hoping to read within the next week. And I try to do this every Sunday just as a nice little recap for the week. I'm trying to also encourage myself to get a little bit more comfortable with live formats. I don't find this to be the easiest form of video content. My brain sometimes gets ahead of me, and so it can be a little awkward talking live. So in an effort to improve that skill, I've been trying to do these every single week. So I'm going to start with personal updates. So this week, well, I guess this weekend, we had kind of a funny, chaotic story. So Oz and I really love to camp, and I haven't been able to go camping for the last 2 months because I've been recovering. And so we decided that this weekend we were going to go camping. And the last 2 weeks have been working part-time, just getting myself ready to go back to full-time. And so this weekend was the last weekend where I had part-time schedules before I go back to my full-time schedule. And when I work full-time, I usually work 12 hours on Friday and 12 hours on Saturday, which is really prohibitive of doing anything on the weekends. And that's hard in our lifestyle because Oz is off Saturday and Sunday, and I'm only off on Sunday. So camping can be a little bit challenging with that scenario. And so we decided we were going to take a camping trip this weekend. And so Mount Charleston is about 45 minutes away from Las Vegas. The plan was that I would work 5 hours on Friday, get off around 2, drive up to Mount Charleston, and get us a spot at our favorite campground. Because I was like, well, most people get off of work at 5 or 6. So we probably, as long as we're there mid-afternoon, I should be able to find something. So I packed everything into my car, went to work, worked my shift, rushed up to Mount Charleston. All the campgrounds were already full, which, it makes sense. It's 115 degrees in Las Vegas, and at Mount Charleston, it's 80 during the day. So I think a lot of people, are going up there to cool off. So I drive an hour and a half around looking at all the campgrounds. Everything's full. So there's a road that goes out into this canyon called Max Canyon, and there is unimproved camping, basically rough in it. So no toilets, no campfires, no benches, anything. You just have a dirt spot that's cleared out that you can camp. And Oz and I have camped there before, and we don't mind that at all. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go down to Max. The only problem is it's a dirt road, and we don't have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. So I have a Mitsubishi Outlander, and so I drove that out there. It's fine. We've taken it down this road before, no problem. But Oz was coming up later with our dog Luna when he got off of work, and he's driving our new Kia, and that is a little lower to the ground than the Outlander. So I'm cognizant of that. So I take the first spot off the dirt road, which is not my favorite spot because you can still hear the traffic. It's not far enough in into the canyon to be away and feel immersed in nature. And I pull up. I realized that I forgot my books, my bag with my books and my laptop at work. And my plan was I have 2 to 3 hours to kill before Oz gets there. So I was planning to read. So I'm like, oh, great. Now I don't have any books to read. So I put my phone on to play audiobooks, and then my phone dies. And then I got hit by a torrential downpour. I decided that I was going to go out and do a little bit of hiking while I was waiting. So I climbed up the side of this little small mountain where we're camping, and I get all the way to the top. And as I'm up at the top, relaxing and enjoying the views of the valley, this just torrential rain hits and just starts flooding everything. So I very carefully make my way back down this mountain, back to the campground, where I now find Oz waiting in a puddle of mud. And he goes, hey, I went and checked the campgrounds on the way up and talked to the campground hosts. And actually, I have a spot at our favorite campground. They happen to have one where somebody decided to clear out because of the rain, I guess. And so we rush back over there, we set up, and the campground hosts are right across from us. And so they have a generator running, which is normal, but usually most campgrounds have a quiet hour of at 10 or 11, everybody has to cut the generators off, and the campground's quiet. So we're cool, this is great. This is our favorite campground. We set up, we do everything. Oz is setting up the tent, and he'd packed all of our equipment, and he realized, oh crap, I forgot your sleeping bag. So I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Because, it's going to get down into the 60s tonight. It's not quite cool enough. Not quite warm enough to sleep without a sleeping bag. So he's like, well, you can take my sleeping bag. And then we have a pretty big warm sleeping bag that we use for Luna. So he's like, I can just unzip that one and spread it out and tuck me and Luna under it, and it'll be fine. We have an air mattress and everything. So I'm like, okay, great. Sounds good. We figured out how to avert that crisis. So my plan from that point is make dinner, rest, because I now have to go back to work on Saturday, but just for 5 or 6 hours. And then I was going to come back up and camp. So it gets to be about 11 and the generator from the campground hosts is still running. And I'm like, oh no, like what's going on? Why are they not turning it off? So I walk over and I chat with the lady and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry to be a bother. I was just curious, like, are you going to be turning the generator off at some point? What are the quiet hours? And she goes, oh yeah, quiet hours are 10 to 6. But as campground hosts, we're guaranteed 24 hours of electricity. And my child has insulin dependent diabetes. So unfortunately, we do have to keep the generator running for his insulin. And I'm like, oh, okay, no, no problem. I understand. Your child's medical needs are much more important than my personal needs. I was just curious. I was like, in that case, we'll probably just check out in the morning because I'm not going to be able to sleep with the generator running. And so, thank you. I appreciate you, but, no issue, right? We're cool. We're very polite, talk, everything's good. So then around midnight, they actually did end up shutting off the generator. I think they felt bad for us because when I showed up, I was soaked from this torrential downpour and everything. So I start to fall asleep finally. And then Luna sits bolt upright and I hear hoofs clomping around. Like we have a paved area where we have a table. So a whole entire herd of deer walked into our campground and was checking out our camping equipment and like Luna's food bowl. And I think they found a few stray kibbles on the floor that Luna must have like knocked over. And so they're munching on those. So she won't lay down. There's like a herd of deer clomping around. It's all loud. So basically at the end of the night, I barely slept. So I get up the next morning. I'm trying to like sleep in a little bit. I think I got about 2 hours of sleep. I get up, I get dressed, and then the campground host comes over and he goes, hey, we had another spot open up further into the campground if you want that one. It's away from the generator. It'll be a little bit quieter. I felt really bad for you last night. We turned off the generator so you could sleep, but I'm not going to be able to do that multiple nights again because of the insulin. I'm like, totally understandable. I would not ask you to do that, nor would I expect it. So they're very nice, and they marked the new spot for us, and I had to leave for work. So Oz was going to camp or pack up all the camp gear, move it to the other site, and then reset up. So then when I got off of work, we just, relax, cook dinner, hang out. And then Sunday I was off, so we would go for some hikes and hang out. So I work all day. I'm going about my business, not really paying attention. And it's about 3:00. I look at my phone to see if Oz needs anything. And I see a couple missed calls plus a text message. I'm like, uh-oh, this is trouble. So I call him and he goes, hey, so my car went dead and everything got flooded. I'm like, what? So apparently after I left, he packed all of the gear and then he started moving everything to the new site and he went to turn the car on and the battery was completely flat. So then he had to get the campground host to jump his car. And apparently just because of the altitude, it like shot the battery for some reason. Then he got everything on the car and moved to the new site, unpacked everything, set everything up. We're all good, right? And he takes Luna to go for a walk. And they get about half a mile away from the car. And all of a sudden, a torrential downpour starts again. Now, there was no rain predicted because you might be like saying, oh, well, why weren't you prepared for rain? So first of all, we were prepared for rain. We had a tarp underneath our tent and we had a tarp above our tent in case of rain. Because in the mountains, you never know. Sometimes you get some afternoon rain and things. We had the rain fly over our tent as well. And then second of all, there was no rain forecasted for the weekend. So we did out of a precaution, but without really expecting there to be these like torrential rains. So Oz starts walking. He's about a half a mile away. And then all of a sudden it just starts raining cats and dogs. He said that the raindrops were like the size of little grapes. And then all of a sudden it turns from rain into hail. And now him and Luna are out in the open, just getting pelted with hail and rain. So they run back to the campground. They dive into the tent. They're both soaking wet. And they're waiting for the rain to stop because at least inside the tent, it's dry. Except it turns into a complete deluge and eventually floods our campground and floods our tent and all of our stuff. So now they're cold, they're wet, the sleeping bags are wet, the tent is wet, everything is just soaked because there's like a river running through the campground. So at that point, Oz gave up. He's just like, I'm done. It's enough. There's too much that's happened this weekend. It's just not the right weekend. And so he packed everything up and went home. So I felt so bad for him because he literally spent his whole day yesterday packing, unpacking, and then repacking. And then he got it all home and everything was wet and muddy from this deluge. And so he had to unpack and clean everything last night. So that was the most, I think, chaotic adventure we've ever had. We camp really frequently all over Utah, Arizona, here in Nevada. We've never had anything like that happen before. Maybe we're just a little rusty because it's been a couple months since we've been able to go. Usually we try to go at least once a month. So that was our little bit of chaotic fun. I thought I would share it just because it's kind of amusing. And then this week, tomorrow, we're actually going to be returning to the same mountain, Mount Charleston, to go for a hike with one of our good friends. We're going to take Luna to get some exercise. This will be my first substantial hike since surgery. So it'll be interesting to see how I do with the physical exertion. I've been doing good with like working out, jogging on the treadmill, all that kind of stuff. So I think I'll be okay. Maybe a few more rests than needed, but also with the altitude, just, because I haven't been at altitude for quite a long time. So that'll be a fun adventure. I hope it's going to be good. This time we're prepared for rain. Well, we were prepared for rain anyways, but we're more prepared for rain. We're going in with the mentality that we will probably get rained on at some point. So everybody's going with their rain gear. So looking forward to that. And then this week I am returning to work full-time. My 2 weeks of part-time work are over, and now it's time to get back into the swing of things. I'm a little nervous. I have a couple really short days, and then I have 2 really long days. So Friday and Saturday for me tend to be between 10 and 12 hours, depending on how things go. So Friday is my hardest day. I'm on my feet cooking all day. It's really hot. It's just really strenuous. Whereas Saturday, it's long, but I'm just sitting there like plating the food and everything. So I'm a little nervous about this really strenuous day on Friday and then another long day to follow it on Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed, everything works out okay. The other thing I wanted to touch on was just something that I don't really talk about on my channel very often, and that's politics. Typically, I focus more on reading and I do occasionally voice my opinions on things, but usually in relevance to books. But today, Biden dropped out of the presidential race here in the United States. I think it's something that we've all been hearing grumblings about for quite a while, and he finally announced it this morning. This kind of is unprecedented. It's happened very close to the election. It's interrupting a campaigning cycle. It's probably leaving a lot of the base really confused and conflicted. And it's a really scary time for a lot of people. Personally, I have the opinion that no matter what, I think it's important whoever the nominee is. In my case, I vote Democrat. So it's important for me to support whoever the eventual nominee is. In this case, Kamala Harris, in my opinion, is like probably the most qualified person. She's been a vice president for 4 years. She was literally one step away from being the president. She understands what the previous president has done because she's been there for the last 4 years, and she's politically experienced and smart. So I think that the time for doubt is over. I've seen a lot of people, kind of grieving and expressing concerns on social media, and I totally understand the confliction that people are feeling. But I just want to say that if the base is feeling conflicted, if we're all feeling confused and we don't unite like now, then this could go really poorly. So I would ask anyone that's watching this that is in the United States and thinking about this election and who to get behind, you have limited time to make up your mind and be certain. Don't, we can't convince people to vote that don't vote normally if we aren't sure ourselves. We have to speak loudly and proudly and be out and be confident in our votes. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think, every year or every election cycle, people say it's super important to vote, but I feel that this particular election cycle is going to be one of those once in a lifetime, potentially world-changing votes. And so I just want to encourage everybody to really think about vocally getting behind whoever you decide to vote for and being very certain and firm in your support. I think that, Harris will eventually become the nominee, and I think that she's honestly the most qualified person to do so. So for what it's worth, I'm sure I'm not changing anyone's minds, but I just wanted to say, be conscientious of what you're saying on social media, be conscientious of that, like, oh man, I don't like her as much as Biden, or I don't this, I don't that. At this point, if you feel the way that I feel about this election, it doesn't matter. If you like her, if you find her charismatic, it matters that she's qualified and she can do the job and she's not Trump. So that's the end of my politics here, or at least like my very direct politics. I hope that everyone will take this election as seriously as it is, because this, again, it could be a world-changing election. So from there, I'm going to talk about the channel really quick. I think through the end of July, I'm going to just try to post as I can. I haven't been posting as much in, July, just because I'm integrating back into work and my normal life. And after having been off for 2 months and very limited physical activity, it's leaving me a little bit tired. And I just don't want to overdo it and overstress myself. So, I want to put up videos, and I am putting up what I can. I got my book of the month video up last week, and I also got my July TBR up a bit late. This week, I am hoping to get up my June wrap up. I have it shot. I have it partially edited. I'm hoping to finish the rest of it maybe this afternoon. And I am hoping to shoot my mid-year freakout tag and maybe the best books that I've read so far in 2024. But I have no guarantees that I'll be able to get all of that done. As I've mentioned, I have to consider how my body is handling work plus the requirements at home, and then whatever energy is left can come to YouTube. But I anticipate in August that I will get back into a more regular posting schedule. I kind of am working on using July as this weird transitional month, and it's causing both me and my partner Oz to really assess our lifestyle, our health, and how we handle things. So hopefully that will lead to a better schedule that kind of supports some of our life goals more in August. Hi, Sherry. Thanks for popping in. So then let's talk books, because that's really what this channel is about, is books. We're here to talk about what we're reading, and I've done a lot of talking, but none of it about that. So I did quite a bit of reading this month. Evening, Caitlin. Hey, Sheila, how are you doing? I've done quite a bit of reading this month, this week rather, and I'm really happy with what I read. Overall, a really good reading week. This is why I hate live stream, is because I mix up words and have moments where I pause. Yeah, books. Yep. That's always going to be the focus. I'll go off on little tangents here and there, but generally I want to always talk about books. So this week I decided I was going to hit a few of the books that I had on my NetGalley shelf, because it's once again out of control. I have no chill in requesting books. I have actually limited my NetGalley requests to only audiobooks, just in an effort to try to get it under control, but I still end up with more than I could possibly read. So this week I got through The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. So this was a thriller, dystopian, sci-fi kind of speculative fiction. So we have a group of people, they're on an island. There is this gaseous fog that wiped out the whole world, and they're trying to figure out how to prevent this fog from coming into the island. And then a murder occurs, and this causes chaos in this very peaceful society where there's no violence. And then they have to unravel what happened. This was enjoyable. I don't know that this was a super profound book. I don't know that I had any earth-shaking revelations from it, but I do enjoy the style in which it was written. I thought it was relatively engaging. Thrillers can be really hard for me because a lot of times I could figure them out before we get to the end. I didn't find myself trying to figure this one out. The style of it allowed me to just relax into it and listen to it and enjoy it. So if you're looking for a good audiobook, something that's maybe not the heaviest, deepest, but just something that's kind of thrilling and fun, that might be a good one to pick up. Let's see. August, I'm participating in Garbogust. Awesome, William. Thank you for popping in and saying hello. And I hope that you really enjoy Garbogust. It always looks like a lot of fun. So after The Last Murder at the End of the World, I also read Morning and Evening by John Foss. So this was a NetGalley arc that I got quite a while back. I had never read Foss before, but I've been getting more into literary fiction, and so I thought I would give him a try. And this is a very short, almost a novella basically, about an older man, and he is kind of coming to the end of his life. His wife has died, a lot of his friends are no longer, and he's just going through the day-to-day. He's, making his cup of tea, forcing himself to eat some bread, just slogging through days. And you can tell he's just kind of giving up. He's apathetic about his continued existence. And then there's this twist that happens at the end that makes you reflect on everything that happened and kind of question what was going on. I will say that Foss really captured the end of life very well. I worked in elder care during the pandemic, and this is a sentiment that I've found a lot of elderly people had. They feel an apathy about their continued survival. All of their friends have passed on. Their families have moved away and established their own families. They're lonely, and they sometimes maybe feel like they don't have a purpose. And so they're just existing. And I think that he captured that feeling very well. The prose was also very lovely, although it was a bit simple. And it was flowy. But I wish that the book had a little bit more substance. I felt like it didn't really delve as deep as I wanted to into some of the feelings of our main character. I wish that I also got an understanding of who he was before he became this apathetic man. We see like his birth, and then it kind of flashes into him being more this elderly, apathetic person. I just wish there was a little bit of a transitional phase where we got to see what he was like when he was full of life and vibrant, because I think it would have made this current state that he's in a little bit more impactful. But overall, it was a decent book. I enjoyed reading it. I would consider reading something by Foss again. And then my last of my NetGalley books this week was Orbital by Samantha Harvey. This is a speculative fiction as well about a crew of astronauts out in space orbiting the Earth. And it is written very prosy and stylistically. It's really literary. It was an interesting experience. It's kind of slow and thoughtful. Same thing, kind of meditating on the human condition and not so focused on the science fiction elements or the sciencey aspects of it. I found myself enjoying it more than I expected. I did wish that maybe there was a little bit more like of a plot or something going on, but it was just a really lovely read. I've been hearing some discussion of this book as a potential Booker nominee. I could see that. It does have that prosy style, and it has that quiet meditative factor that the Booker seems to like. So maybe. Probably my favorite read of the week was Annie-Bot by Sierra Greer. So I actually started this last week. I read like maybe the first 70 pages in one sitting, and I got forced to put it down by real life. But yesterday, while we were camping, I picked it up and I sat down and I binge read the entire rest of the book. This was so good. I absolutely devoured this. I loved this book. This was 5 stars. I expect that this will be on my best of 2024 list at the end of the year. This definitely tackled AI in a way I haven't seen done previously. I think that it, really discussed like women's rights, bodily autonomy, artificial intelligence and sentience, all of those things just so thoughtfully. I cannot recommend this enough. I knew going into it that I was probably going to like it because I've seen my mom really liked it, and I've seen a couple other people really highly recommend it. But let me join the chorus of voices saying that this was fantastic. The thing that's funny about it too, so we have this AI named Annie, and she was originally programmed to take care of the house, and then her master switches her mode, and she becomes basically what's called a cuddle bunny, which is a personal relationship with sex included. And so her dynamic changes. He makes her autodidactic so she can develop like free thought and things like that. And as she has more and more experiences, she becomes more sentient and more aware of the things that are going on with her. And that process is really fascinating. It's handled so, so well. And then there's an occurrence where something very serious happens, and Annie has a very strong response to it. And at that point, I thought this book was going to go into a different direction. And I was really concerned because at first I was like, oh no, please don't do this. I hate where this is going. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And then literally in the last 2 pages, the conclusion was just brilliant. I held on because so many people loved it. And I was like, okay, something's got to change. Something's got to change. And the ending was such a breath of fresh air, such a relief. Like I felt myself just like so tense. I think that especially women reading this book are going to just like viscerally respond to it. There is so much packed into this book that like most women will relate to. And it's interesting because she is an artificial being, and you're still relating to her and just going, oh, this is horrible. This is horrible. Just a brilliant book. So then I am partially through 2 other books. So I've been reading Friday Black by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah during my reading sprints on Mondays, which I will have one tomorrow at 9 a.m. So if you're looking forward to sprinting, please come in and say hello. So I've just been reading like 40 pages of this on each reading sprint. I kind of enjoy it because these are some pretty heavy short stories. Each one is really thematically deep and explores a very difficult topic. And so I kind of am enjoying like savoring them slowly, reading like 2 short stories every Monday. And I think with that rate, I will be through this by the end of the month. So this week I read 2 more stories in here. There was one called The Era, I think. Lark Street. I forget which story it was, but it talks about feelings, right? And it's like this future society where everybody's taking this drug called the good to make them feel good. And basically it gets rid of like sad feelings or like any like anger, anxiousness, all that kind of stuff. And then we have a character who is finding that even though he's taking these injections of the good, he's still feeling kind of sad. And there are people called the sads that are like basically walking around, or shoe lookers, that's what they're called. Basically people that have the sads and they're walking around looking at their shoes constantly and like tearing up and emotional. And they're mocked and made fun of and treated horribly. And this character is cognizant of the fact that he's feeling sad, and he's like, I don't want to be a shoe looker. I don't want to be a shoe looker. And there's just this like really big fear of feeling emotions. I thought that was a fantastic story. It was really, really interestingly done. So I'm definitely excited about getting through some more of these. I'm hoping we have another 100 pages of this book to go. So I'm hoping to get through about 50 pages tomorrow. Good books and interesting that you read. Thank you so much. I try to keep them varied and interesting. I mean, I get bored if they're not interesting. So if I didn't find them interesting, how am I going to make them interesting to anyone else? I finished The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. It's okay, but the ending, why? That's about my reaction to it too. I felt like also her depiction of PTSD in that particular story was very like stereotypy and overblown. My ex-husband had severe post-traumatic stress from the Iraq War. And so having witnessed it firsthand, and I mean, he had a fairly severe case of it. So not to try to like make it like, anyways, it didn't match my experiences with post-traumatic stress. And I felt like she really leaned into cliches and stereotypes and kind of over exaggerated, what it can be to make a really, I guess, I don't know, a strong impact in her story. And then, yeah, the ending, I didn't love like the second half of the book, to be honest. The first half, I was fairly engaged. So I'm glad I'm not the only one that didn't love how it ended. Okay, so the other book that I'm halfway through now is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. So beginning of June, I read Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. It is his new book that's coming out, and I had never read him before, never even heard of him before, actually. And I saw it on NetGalley as an audiobook, and so I listened to Bury Your Gaze. It was fantastic. So much fun. Everything you want from a horror. It had some thriller elements to it, but some really deep themes. I just devoured it. And so I decided I wanted to read his previous book, Camp Damascus. So I'm about 50% through it right now, and it is following a young woman. So she is the member of an extremely religious, borderline cult. And she is very, very devout. She is just focused on doing everything for God and for her parents. So like, it starts out pretty sweet. She's out with friends. They're doing some stuff. And you can see she has some unusual reactions to some of the things that, are like occurring around her. Like a friend asks her, to take a picture, and she's kind of weirded out. A boy holds her hand while she jumps into the lake, and she's kind of weirded out. And then she goes home. And at home, things start to get really weird. Her family, like the interactions are just kind of strained. And she's so focused on like being a good girl and making her parents happy. And so it's like she comes off almost as like a much younger child than she is. It's just this really like unsettling feeling. It's kind of similar to like when you're reading Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, where it's quiet and you can't quite figure out what's wrong, but you know something's wrong. So that's that feeling at the beginning of Camp Damascus. And then she slowly starts to realize that things aren't quite right. And she is digging and digging and digging. And I've just gotten to the point where she's starting to uncover what happened to her. Now, I had a feeling about what had happened to her, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be vindicated in my feeling. I kind of see where this is going, so it's maybe slightly more predictable than Bury Your Gaze, but I'm actually really enjoying this one as well. So I think Chuck Tingle is now an author that I will be frequently reading and buying. Probably not his Tinglers, which are his like erotica, smut-based stories, but definitely when he writes like horror thrillers, I will be picking up his books. If you like thematically heavy horror that says a lot, then definitely worth checking out. Okay, that's everything that has been read or partially read this week. Let's see. Read 3 of her books and one I really liked. I think I've read 4 or 5 of Kristen Hanna's books. So I really liked The Four Winds. I really liked The Women, and I really liked The Nightingale. Anything else? I'm trying to think what else I've read. So I guess I've read 4. And so I've liked 3 and disliked 1. But the one that I disliked, I really have strong feelings about, clearly. Oh, didn't know this was coming up. Hey, Caitlin. Hey, Margaret. Yeah, I do a live stream every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's just a weekly update, nothing too special. Thank you for dropping by and saying hello, though. All right, so reading plans for the upcoming week. I liked The Nightingale and paused on Four Winds. Yeah, I think The Nightingale is pretty much everybody's like favorite book of hers. I think that is definitely the highlight of her writing career so far. I think The Four Winds is kind of hit and miss. Some people seem to like it, some people don't. I struggled with it at the beginning. I found like the first little bit to be very slow, but as they move west and get into like the camps and things like that, I found that part really interesting, and it ended up being a good book for me. I don't know if it's worth revisiting for you. If you didn't feel like you were vibing with it, then maybe just leave it. So, plans for this week. So I am buddy reading Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton with Raspberry Reads. And I had already started this last year. I was in like 75 pages in, and I put it down and I kind of forgot about it. So Catherine and I were talking about reading a book together, and this was the one that we both had to check off. So we're working our way through it. I've reread the first like 80 pages, and I'm hoping to finish this up this week. I don't know what it is with this book. So I enjoy it. The writing is good, and the characters are interesting, and the scenario is compelling. But for some reason, the first bit of this book just seems so heavy. I recently saw a review. I want to say it was maybe Hannah, and she said it was very exposition heavy. And perhaps that's what it is that's like bogging me down, is just all the exposition and the like world building and everything. There's just something that's not quite clicking for me yet. I don't think it's a bad book, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to push through this time, though. I don't want to put it down and like give up. I want to get further in and see what everybody's raving about. And then I actually started this week as well, but I didn't get far enough to talk about it. Let's see. Was probably the audio for me would probably click with a paperback. Yeah, maybe so. Again, like I said, it's kind of a slow start, but once you get into it, I feel like the story does get pretty engaging. Oh, nice. Birnam Wood's on my shelf, but not for this week. Going to be disappointed if there's no Shakespeare Connection, though. Yeah, saw Hannah's review too. Yeah, I don't know about the Shakespeare Connection. I'm not far enough to know why it was named this. Wait a minute. I take this back. The group, I think the group, there's like an activist group, and I think they're named Birnam Wood, if I'm remembering correctly. Okay, so Adventures of a Huckleberry Finn. So I started this week after I finished Annie Bot at the campground yesterday. I read like the first 5 pages of this. I'm not going to lie. I'm already struggling. I'm reading it, and I'm just like, ugh. This is like the curse of the classics for me. But I'm going to push through it because I plan to read James this week by Percival Everett, and I wanted to refresh on Huck Finn before I got into James. I have heard lots of people say that you do not need to read Huck Finn to read James. I totally get it. I'm sure that this reads just fine without having the classic that it's referencing. But it's been such a long time since I've read Huck Finn. I think I was maybe in like middle school when I read it last. So I just feel like to get everything out of this book, I want to have this fresh in my mind. So I'm working my way through this, and hopefully this by the end of the week. And then if those 2 get completed, I want to get to Wayward and Little Rot by Akwaeke Emeze. I've been meaning to get to Little Rot for like a couple weeks now. This is one of my most anticipated books this year, new releases. And so I just really want to read it right now. So we'll see. One of these for sure is getting read. And then I have a lot going on my NetGalley shelf as well. Oops, sorry. As I mentioned, I'm like busy trying to get caught up on some of the stuff that I have there. So I recently got approved for Hera by Jennifer Saint. I really enjoy the Greek mythology retellings. Not all of them, of course, because some of them are better than others. But I really enjoy Jennifer Saint's retellings, and so I am hoping to get to Hera. Some other options that I have are The Haunting of Hecate Cavendish, which I've been hearing really good things about. I love a good pirate story. The Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi was one of my favorites of last year. So I'm hoping that Hecate Cavendish will be equally as exciting. And then I got Smother Moss by Alyssa Allering. Sorry, I forgot what the author's name was. So that is a debut horror novel set in the Appalachian Mountains, and it sounded fantastic. It came onto my radar because of my book of the month and aardvark predictions, so I'm really hoping to get into that one as well. And then I also got Let Me Liberate You by Andy Davis, which is, I think, a satire set in the Caribbean, and it sounds really interesting too. So those are some potentials to get off of my NetGalley shelf. Let's see. That was a trudge in junior high for me to Blurg Bite Through. Yeah, I struggle with classics in general because like the writing style for me, I just don't relate to it. And like in Huck Finn, of course, the language is very outdated and the opinions of people and the way people are treated are very outdated, which is fine. I understand this was a different time period and everything. But it's hard for me to stay focused with classics a lot because of like the outdated language and everything. But again, I feel like I want to have that fresh just because I want James to be, I want to get everything that James is going to throw at me. I'm glad you enjoyed Annie Bot as much as I did. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think that might be in my top books of 2024. Like I'm going to call it right now because I have a hard time imagining that I will read 24 more books that are going to be better than Annie Bot. Hecate Cavendish gets points for the character name. I'm interested in that one on audio. That's what I have it on as audio for my ARC. I think my mom actually got a copy of it. She found it just out and about somewhere. I've been hearing kind of mixed reviews. So I've heard some people say it was really good and some people that are kind of like, yeah, it was a little slow or a little this or that. But I think it sounds good. Satire in the Caribbean. Wait, which one is that? I will show you. Let me find it. Let me see if I can. I guess I can't show it. So it's called Let Me Liberate You, and it's by Andy Davis. I want to say it is a debut novel as well. Let Me Liberate You. So I can pull up all the details. Sorry to show it on Amazon here because, indie is better, but just so you can see the cover. This is the one I'm talking about. So it says, a restless New York artist searching for purpose returns to Barbados and stumbles into the role of activist in this scathingly funny and brilliantly observed satire about privilege, family discord, and performative do-gooding. So that sounded super interesting to me. I love satire when it's done really well. I love that this is going to be set in Barbados. I don't know if I've actually ever read a book that was specifically set in Barbados, and I like the themes that it's going to cover. So I'm excited about that. Bricks Without Straw is the same for me, just revulsion to the page, but someday perhaps. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Bricks Without Straw. Is that a book title? Sorry if I'm like slow not getting it. Thank you. Got it on the list. Yay. Hopefully you like it. I've seen with this particular book the satire is talking about, I've seen mixed reviews, but I feel like that's really common with satire because the people that get it find it funny and interesting and like it says deep things, and the people that don't get it are like, I hated this book, it was boring, or it didn't make sense. So for me, like a low rating on literary fiction or satire will not convince me not to read it. I think, in fact, sometimes it actually convinces me to read it because I think those types of books really make people think and like challenge your beliefs and whatnot. And so it tends to be like a polarizing type of book. So hopefully that's what the case is here. It's going to be good, but just really polarizing. So I think that's pretty much everything. We have talked about life. I shared some camping chaos. I've shared that I'm going back to work full-time this week, talked about the channel plans. I guess also in channel plans, I didn't really discuss this, but I've been taking like a video course that is teaching me about shorts and how to use them effectively. And I really struggle with short form content. I hate filming it. I hate thinking about it. I'm very verbose, as you can see. I like to chat a lot. And so it's really hard for me to make my thoughts concise enough to fit into a 30-second video. So I've been taking a course on like how to make short form content and use it effectively, how to get your message across in short form. So maybe I will be experimenting in August with some short form content. I don't want to make any promises because I've said that before, but it's a thing that's like on the burner. So in August, hopefully we'll be getting back to a more regular posting schedule, maybe a few pieces of short form content here. And the other thing too, I've been working on writing some reviews for my Goodreads and my Storygraph. I honestly am so terrible at writing reviews, but I've decided that I really want to catch them up before I get to the end of the year and there's like 300 reviews. So I have been posting like maybe 2 reviews a night at this point, 1 to 2 a night. It's like my goal to get at least 1 done every single night. So if you like reading written reviews or you want more details on books ever, my Goodreads and my Storygraph are both Bandy's books as well as my Instagram. And so I'm posting written reviews over there. I'm trying to be really thorough and detailed in my reviewing. I'm not the funniest reviewer. I know a lot of people like throw in jokes and make their reviews super entertaining, but I try to make my thoughts very clear and concise. So if you want written reviews, definitely come find me on Goodreads and Storygraph. And if you friend me, I will absolutely friend you back. Bricks Without Straw is a classic from around 1900 portraying the South during slavery. So bark, but it's supposedly progressive for the time. Okay. Sorry, I wasn't familiar with that book. Yeah, I struggle sometimes reading those older books when they portray, I mean, you know that if you're reading a book from 1900, it's going to portray slavery in a really like modern, detestable way. And so like intellectually, I guess you prepare for that, but it doesn't make it pleasant or enjoyable to read. And that's kind of how I'm feeling about Huck Finn already. It's like I'm 5 pages in and I'm just like, ugh, I really hate the way this one character is behaving and treating things. But hopefully, like I said, it'll be worth the effort because it will help me understand where James is coming from. Oh, short strategy. We'll be eager to see what you can take from it. Haha, same on the rambling. Yeah, the thing that I have taken from it is that so far is that I need to plan them because before I would just try to like shoot them on a whim and then I'd end up blah, 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 and then, you know, I'd have 5 minutes of content to try to cut into one. So it is now like they're reframing like how you think about it. Like instead of trying to give a full review, think about bullet points. And instead of giving all the information up front, give hooks and then progressively give the information. And then the conclusion of the video should be like, this is the book you should read, whatever. Anyways, it's pretty interesting. And it was relatively accessible. We'll see, you know, all these marketing courses and video courses and things promise to like make your account blow up and this and that. And I'm not really doing this in an effort to like make the account blow up. I don't really care. You know, the account's growing fine on its own. My social media is doing well. I've engaged with so many wonderful people via social media. It's more just that I really don't understand short form content and I like to understand things a little better. So that's why I started that. That sounds like a good course. Where is it from? It's from One Peak Creative. So I came across them via Instagram. Every once in a while, I'll get some advertisements. And honestly, like 99% of the courses that I've looked at through Instagram and social media have been scams. You know, people promise you the magical secret to hit 1 million subscribers and get monetized and quit your job and retire and live in the Bahamas. And the reality is that none of those courses can do that for you. They can offer you some hints and tricks, but honestly, like 99% of the information that you need is for free. You know, you can Google how to do SEO. You can Google how to use keywords effectively. You can Google how to work with tags. You can Google how to edit my videos better. All that kind of stuff is out there. You just have to do the work to look for it. And I think that's the thing that gets overwhelming for people. The reason that I opted for this particular course is because it's very specific. It goes from top to bottom. It's mostly focused on TikTok and Instagram. But it could be replicated in terms of YouTube as well. And so I have never really messed with TikTok at all. I have an Instagram. I do have a TikTok, but I've posted like 5 videos and they've done nothing. And like I said, I hate the short form. So I just thought that it would be interesting to learn about short form content, maybe try to work with my Instagram a little bit. And then maybe, you know, I can put up a little bit of short content here on YouTube once in a while. So we'll see. Maybe I'll get inspired. And, you know, I have ADHD, so I get into hyperfocus. And if I get inspired and hyperfocused at the same time, you could end up with, you know, 1,000 short form videos at some point. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. Review party. I do those every once in a while to keep up to date. The authors appreciate it. Yeah. So that was kind of what started me is I had to catch up. I try always to make sure, like when I have ARCs, to post my reviews. I mean, I always talk about them on YouTube. I talk about them on Instagram. So like for me, for example, okay, so this is the whole process. And this is me getting chatty again. If I receive an ARC from an author, I will always post a story about it on Instagram, like showing like, yeah, I just received this book. It's so cool. Or shout out to this author. I'm reading this, whatever, just some kind of a shout out. I try to post a review on my Instagram, like a written review. if I didn't love the book, especially if it's an indie author, sometimes I won't post like a negative review, but I'll just instead post like a summary and like, this is what I read and blah, 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 blah. So that way, at least even if I didn't love it, they're still getting some attention. And then I always try to make my posts on on Goodreads and Storygraph. And then I'll always talk about books in my reading wrap-ups and weekly updates. So that's a minimum for receiving an ARC. So I thought like, well, if I'm making all this effort to catch up my reviews on ARCs, I should just make the same effort to catch up my reviews on all of the books that I've read, because every author appreciates reviews. So now I'm working my way through it, and I'm trying to do it instead of sitting down and like binging for a whole day and just like doing all the reviews at once. I'm trying to do a couple a night and work my way through. So we'll see, catching up a little bit by little bit. So yeah, again, if you like reading reviews, come find me on Goodreads and Storygraph. I wish I was a classics reader. My parents have a lot of oldies. I wish I was in some ways too. I wish that I could talk about like the history of literature a little bit more intelligently, and I had like a wealth of knowledge in terms of old books. But unfortunately, school ruined a lot of classics for me. And so, you know, occasionally I'll try to pick them up. I've been enjoying James Baldwin. I've been enjoying Zora Neale Hurston, Toni Morrison, some of the like more modern classics, but definitely some of these older ones still are really hard for me. All right, guys, I think I have rambled on for 45 minutes now. This might be the longest update I've done in quite a while. If you're around tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I will be doing reading sprints. We usually are around for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We have a great group of people that pop in to read, and I look forward to seeing you there if you're around. If not, I will see you when I see you. Thank you for dropping by. I hope everybody has a really productive week next week, and not productive in the toxic, like, yeah, constantly busy, but productive in a healthy way. So yeah. Ciao, ciao. Thanks. Bye, guys. Ciao.